All right, y'all. Welcome. Happy Wednesday. Hope everyone's doing well. Thanks so much for joining and spending the next 45 minutes with us. Really, really excited. Thanks for your patience as we got started. I was trying to actually go live on LinkedIn simultaneously, and alas, we've had some tech issues. So we are not live on LinkedIn right now. But hey, sometimes that's the world we're living in. So thanks for being flexible and adaptable with me. Before we kick off, I just want to set some ground rules, expectations, tee up the conversation. So excited to have Stefan here to talk about how AI is redefining the event experience. I think you're all going to be very fascinated by the layers to his level of expertise and how it is actually being threaded into the event world. So I am thrilled to have this conversation. Stefan, thanks so much for joining us. And before I hand it over to you, just want to let everyone here know that this session is being recorded. It'll be made available on demand. We're also going to have a summary available within 24 hours after. And get active in the chat. Introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, where you're calling from, but also ask questions. Get active. We're going to be monitoring. And this isn't just a conversation between Stefan and I. This is a conversation between all of us. So I want to make sure that, as I'm going, I'm going to be really thoughtful about making sure that we get all of your questions answered. And you can do that by using the Q&A functionality here on Zoom, or even just drop your question in the chat. So we are following along. And with that, we'll also take some questions at the end. So if you want to feel on hold, we'll leave a few minutes for questions. But without further ado, very, very excited to get started. I'm going to stop my screen share here. Stefan, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, you got it. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Fun fact, I actually, this could even be like a fun way to start. Stefan is actually live at Health this week. So it's the last day of the conference. He's been attending in person. And I don't know, I think it'd be fun to even hear about what you're seeing and learning in real time. But before we get there, why don't you just set the context for us? Can you tell us a little bit about your background, where you come from, and how that's led you into the event space today?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me. Pleasure to be here. Yes, I'm at Health. I'm literally drying out as we speak because it's in Vegas, which means you desiccate over the course of 3 days. So if my lips look cracked or I start being hoarse, that's the reason for that. Um, so yeah, I'm Stefan Weitz. I'm a tech nerd, basically. I've been a tech nerd since I was a small child. So I'm not a conference or an event person at all. I've been to about probably 300 of them, and spoken at probably 200 of them, but never actually planned one. But what was exciting for me is to see AI coming to the forefront. I've been doing things in AI since, again, I was like 8 years old, literally, I think, is when I started doing my first silly rule set program. And I worked so hard over the years to bring it to fruition, and it never really did. It never really came to fruition. We could never quite get to where we wanted to be, whether it was with C3PO, if you're a Star Wars nerd, or Knight Rider, if you're a Hasselhoff fan. I mean, who isn't? And suddenly we see the kind of this explosion of transformer models and large language models, and I began to see this capability for machines and humans to actually speak in a more natural way. So very exciting to see kind of the progression. But again, the challenge that we saw when talking to a bunch of companies was that most companies didn't know what to do with this Promethean power that we now have. And so the challenge we saw was an incredible technology, one of the most transformative technologies in the last 50 years, huge opportunity. Companies didn't know what to do with the opportunity in most cases. And in our analysis, no one was really doing a great job in the event space
Mm.
to corral the thought leaders, to corral the industry leaders, to corral the enterprise leaders and say, great, you've read all the news, you've seen all the great webcasts, you've watched Sam Altman talk about the next coming. What exactly do you do with it? And that was really the genesis for HumanX, and why I was decided to do it, because I have a unique view of AI. My partner John Weiner, who's the founder of Health,
Hmm.
he understands events better than probably anybody out there. He did Money 2020 and Shop Talk as well, and so the two of us together make a nice team to go figure out how to bring this to life. So that's a bit of background.
Yeah, that's incredible. And for some context, your inaugural first ever HumanX event is happening in Vegas in March next year.
Yep.
So I think we're catching you at a really timely moment because you are in the throes of building, learning, um, and I think kind of how we're going to frame this conversation for everyone's context is that, for part one, we're going to dive into how Stefan's getting started, and John, and how they're building their programming to attendees' needs, because their point of view on AI, like I said, is layered, right? It's a convening for AI leaders, and I think they're doing a masterclass job of implementing the use of AI to create a better event experience. So the second part of the conversation will go into what are they actually doing practically, from pre-event, during the event, and post-event, with different tools, platforms, and AI technologies to create an incredible attendee experience. So that's how we're going to spend our time today. And again, if you have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. So I'd love to hear, a little bit more as you move from this long career in the tech space and founding HumanX and founding this premier convening to help advance the use of AI. What's your ethos of events? And that could be like everything from why convening matters to like what are you
Yeah.
trying to influence and do differently. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Sure.
what's your ethos around events?
Well, certainly, as a true nerd, I always thought events were about content. I assume people went to them to really understand what was happening in the world and find the speakers that were interesting to you and finding them afterwards and grabbing dinner with them or whatnot. That was kind of my core value as I saw it in the event space. And when I got into this, we did more research, obviously, and quickly realized that that was not the top priority for most people. The top priority for most people is to find connections that can help them in their career, in their personal life, to get questions answered for things they're working on. So that you can't do yet, I would argue, super effectively online. Certainly there are places you can, but as far as having those authentic conversations where you can break down barriers, you can get past the artifice of title and position, and instead actually engage at a very human level was really important to most people. So that was the first thing that we really wanted to focus on, was ensuring that we create this atmosphere where those connections, either prescribed or random, can happen. Um, and the second thing is really about this notion of ROI, which I know is overused
Mm,
and probably overblown, but it's true. If you think about, as an attendee going to most events, I would argue the ROI, if you count the expense to get there, the expense of the event, the expense of the expenses at dinners, and just your time, like I have to think carefully about, did I really even get what I put into this out of it? And in most cases, I would argue I probably didn't. And so really making sure that people who come feel a very tangible ROI from the event. That's a really big focus, probably the primary focus for us. And that ROI can manifest in different ways. But really, if you look at what John's previous events have been, there's a real focus both on exceptional content, on great experiences for the attendees. So incredible food and great production value, like, insane stages, all that sort of thing. But probably most importantly, is there's a marketplace to get things done, whether it's
mm,
a vendor trying to sell solutions to a company or a startup trying to figure out how he or she gets funding. That marketplace, that bazaar, if you will, on the floor and around the event, that's really important to people. And again, as just more of an outsider looking in, I always thought that felt very grubby to a certain extent. Like, is it a trade show? And I don't really understand this, but that's actually not true at
mm.
all. That really is a very important piece of what people come to these things for, is to really find those connections that can help them in various and sundry ways.
I love that. So as you started scoping HumanX, right? Inaugural event, you're starting from scratch, you're building. Um, I think you've done a brilliant job kind of pulling the right threads in terms of how you start to build a holistic experience for the right people. Can you walk us through when you got started like what was your approach to making sure that you were A, reaching the right people, and B, curating the content and the experience that people really wanted from an ROI standpoint?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we started this journey in February of this year. So what, I guess what, 8 months ago, roughly, and 7 months ago, I guess now. Eight, yeah, 8 months ago. Good Lord, time has flown. And so we that's when we raised the venture capital to go put this together, which we did back in Feb. Um, and again, the kind of VC pitch was relatively simple. It's like, as I mentioned before, big problem set, no one doing a great job. A marketplace here does exist. There are plenty of buyers and sellers in the place. So that's an interesting dynamic to have there. As far as how we approached it, I mean, initially, to answer your question around the attendees, initially we probably had a far too lofty impression of ourselves because we said we're making this invite only, we're making this or application only. Like, yeah, you know what? Not everyone can come. We're only looking at those who we really want there. So we're going to open up applications and you can apply. And as a first year event with zero track record and very few speakers, shockingly, that didn't work very well. And so we had to move instead to kind of an open registration, which has been much better. But what that means is that we have to position the thing very carefully, because if we are now saying anyone can come, we have to be pretty careful about saying, look, this isn't for everybody. And it's not a judgment. It's just, unless you have kind of budgetary or board level authority to figure out your AI strategy for your organization, this probably isn't the right place for you. It's not the right place for a junior early in career marketing manager, for example, from Salesforce. I'd love to have them, but that's just probably not going to be the highest value for them. It's probably the wrong place for them to be, because we're not getting necessarily into super detailed technical models. We're not getting into twisting knobs and dials on particular technologies. And so it's designed for those business leaders that actually have that charter. And that's really, if you look at our language, look at how the website is built out, look at all of our emails that are going out, that's really the focus. And hopefully that will pull them through the right people into the organization. So that was our misstep, and then our recovery, if you will. And then is really, yeah, I was talking to someone yesterday, and he said, really, you got to make sure you have stardust and gold dust. Those are the two things he said you must have in any event. This person's a very well-known kind of event owner, if you will. And what he meant by that was stardust are all the speakers. It's the kind of the zhuzh. It's the caliber of speakers. It's where you're going to have it, like create that impression of excellence. And then the gold dust are people who can come who will actually transact and get things done and buy things and sell things. And he goes, unless you have both those things, you won't be successful. You can have all the stardust in the world, but if no one's buying and selling, you might have an okay event, but likely you're not going to have an event that builds real enterprise value over time. And if you only have the gold dust, meaning you just have buyers and sellers, then it feels too much like a potential like a trade show, which again, not bad, just it's a different model. And so his point was you have to have both of those things in equal measures. And if one doesn't work as well, you will not be as successful. So we keep that in mind too.
I love that analogy.
It's
Stardust and
definitely not
gold
mine. I
dust.
totally ripped it off. So don't, yeah, not mine, but it's a good one.
Amazing. So you got really, really clear on who this is right for, who this is wrong for, and I'd love for you to pull back the layers on how are you then creating a compelling program that drives relevance and ROI. And you had a very, very tactical, data-driven approach.
Yeah.
Could you share how you did that and how you're
Yeah.
actually creating the event programming?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think we all know if we're in events, like as though I'm one of the team now, but yeah, as people there who are much more skilled than I am in creating events know, especially for year one, it's almost like, well, who can I get to speak? And then I'll build the program around that. And certainly there are aspects to that for us as well. It was like, okay, who can I call that I can come and convince them to do a year one event with no background and anything else? That certainly happened early on. But the intent always was, which we have now done, to conduct a massive study across the enterprise space to figure out what enterprises actually cared about as it relates to AI. And that was understanding everything from what's worked, what hasn't worked, how do you measure ROI for your AI investments, how much are you spending, do you think you're behind or ahead of your competitors, all these questions. So we did in
Mm.
conjunction with Harris, the largest polling company. I'm sure many of you have heard of as it's election season right now, the Harris company. So Harris and HarrisX and HumanX teamed up, and we conducted this massive 1,000+ company study of AI. And what that gave us was about 250,000 data points in
Wow.
across almost every vertex you could imagine. It was we touched everything, and that gave us then by industry. So we have 10 tracks at the event, and they're all variously focused on industries that are relevant, that have AI needs. And it gave us this really clear insight as to, oh my gosh, finance actually cares more about these three things. Healthcare cares about these four things. And what we thought was so important in some cases, no one cared about. And so what it
Mm.
forced us to do after our initial kind of cut of the agenda, which we released in July, which is really more of a high level conceit, it forced us to go back and say, gosh, some speakers that we asked early on to come probably aren't right anymore because they don't cover any of the topics that make sense to people. And oh my gosh, we have holes here in policy, or we have holes here in infrastructure. How do we go fill those and find the right people to ensure the questions that we see the community asking in this space are actually answered? So it's a monumental task. I'm sure all of you who plan events know, like the Jenga that you have to do to even
Mm-hmm.
forget topics, just like figuring out 300 speakers some of whom are very fancy people, who have very fancy needs, like figuring out all those speakers, how they fit together, who can talk on what day, who won't talk with somebody else. So you have that complexity, and then you layer on top of that. Now we're being very, very kind of almost reductive around, okay, this is what they must talk about because that's what the community cares about. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a multivariate problem. Luckily, we've got a great team on it, but it's certainly not for the faint of heart. Whenever I look at the task, I want to start having a cocktail at 9 a.m., which I do not do, but I have thought about it many times in the conversations.
The word here that jumped out to me was complexity,
Yeah,
and I think that you and your team are doing a fantastic job of actually owning a lot of complexity, but actually creating a much more streamlined attendee experience on the front end, right? A lot of complexity in the back end,
a lot of
but
complexity. Yeah.
very, very simplified, streamlined, even I would say like concentrated and focused
Mm-hmm.
attendee experience. So you collected all these data points.
Mm-hmm.
You're really, really clear on the verticals, the
Mm-hmm.
leaders, the personas across all the enterprise businesses that you want to reach. And but you're able to deliver with simplicity. And
Well, hopefully.
I I'd I'd love for you to kind of double click on like how are you structuring the content
Yeah.
tracks in order to kind of create a through line
Yeah.
for different segments of your audience that are going to be attending.
Absolutely. Yeah, to your first point, it probably comes from my years of building products and being in tech. Like the best products are the ones that are simple to use, but generally that means that on the engineering side, we have taken and abstracted and obfuscated all the complexity behind some incredible interface. That's why Apple, in many cases, is so good because all the things that have to happen, the user generally doesn't see. But if you understood the level of complexity and even doing things like push notifications, your head would explode, right? And so they're very good at
Mm-hmm.
that. That's to me the same kind of thing. I'm applying that sort of thinking to this event because we've all been to events, and obviously I hope so. And for me at least, the most confounding part of an event was that I always felt like the burden was on me to make it worthwhile. And I'm thinking to
Mm.
myself, what other product do I pay for? Several $1,000s, maybe, $10,000 and start kind of travel and hotel and everything else. What other thing do I pay 4 to 5 digits for, where the burden of its utility is mostly on me? Didn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense to me to this day. I still don't understand it. And so I said, well, gosh, how do we figure out a way to reduce that complexity, reduce that cognitive burden, reduce that pre-work that one has to do to make it useful, and attempt to, and I'm not sure we'll get it right always in year one, but attempt to create more of a kind of almost a thoughtless experience in the sense that you don't have to necessarily pre-plan for a week to make sure you're maximizing your time there. And so to answer your question around the tracks and how that manifested, and this may be, by the way, a terrible idea. This may be a total failure, and we'll see what happens in year one. But I'm going for it because what the hell, that's what I like to build stuff. It hasn't all worked, but stuff I have built sometimes works. So what I said was, I want to take for a particular track. Let's just take finance, for example. Traditionally, at an event like this, at a horizontal event, not a vertically focused one like health, but more of a horizontally focused one, you will have finance stuff across all the days. You'll have finance content across all the days, which means as an attendee, you're frantically looking at what's happening. When's the keynote on? When's this track on? Oh my God, it's in that session. It's that hall over there. I have to run over there and get that. And I'm missing my meeting over here. And I don't know who I'm talking to over here. And it just becomes this cacophonous mess. And so I said, what if we just take for each track all the specific content for that track and boil it down to one day? So for example, Monday at HumanX, I think it's finance, retail, and healthcare. Those are the three content areas that will be covered that day. There's still main stage stuff happening. There's still tons of talks, the big talks on main stage. That's all going on. The roundtables are going on. But what it means is for a finance person, he or she can come in and say, okay, great. I'm finance. Tell me what to go do. And we can say with confidence, okay, here's all your sessions on Monday you should be attending. Here's the keynotes you want to go see. And then, by the way, on days 2 and 3, you're welcome to go check out the other tracks content because in many cases that will be relevant to your organization as well. But you no longer have to, you don't have to go those days to get the most value you can out of that particular, that content track. So that's one thing we do. So we call it conference threading. So basically, we are taking the burden of creating almost a through line through the event, such that in our persona write up, there's a guy named Chad who is in finance. I don't know why I called him Chad. I just thought it was funny. Hopefully, there's no Chads on the call who take offense to that. But Chad the
Who also
finance
work in
bro,
finance.
yeah, Chad the finance bro. We literally wrote an 8-page doc walking Chad, looking at how Chad was spending every hour of his time at HumanX. And so we went by day, by hour, actually. Here's what Chad's doing. Here's what he's seeing. Here's who he's meeting. Here's how he's meeting people. And so that then formed the basis of, rather than the spaghetti at the wall approach, which I've been to a lot of events that do this and hope to God the attendee finds value. We're taking the burden on to say, we're going to be prescriptive about what you should be doing. It's your choice. You can totally ignore it. But if that's all the time you have, if that's all if you want to maximize your time, you can just follow our suggestions and walk out feeling more relaxed, calmer, better informed, etc. So that's how we're approaching this. It really is designed so that we take on the burden of programming for every individual person at a hyper personalized and mass personalized level, such that they don't have to do all the work to make it valuable.
Love the personalization component. And I think I used these words earlier, but I love this idea of conference threading and simplicity and concentration, because you're also doubling down on the promise that you mentioned at the beginning around you're maximizing the value for what someone cares about on one very specific day with a very specific experience or journey.
Yeah.
But then it's opening up the opportunity for the
Exactly.
connections, the collisions,
Yep.
meetings, marketplace,
Yep.
experience, like one of a kind experiences on the other days to round out more holistically, making sure that someone walks away from HumanX saying, I just had the best experience of my life at an event.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. Exactly right. That's the conceit, and that's again, the risk is, I'm sure everyone who's done this before is the risk is like, well, what if the person then comes just for the day and leaves on Tuesday? Doesn't that screw up your hotel block? Doesn't that screw up, the kind of marketplace? And the answer is, yeah, it totally could screw that up. We're betting on the fact that we have got, if you look at our speaker list, this combination of the biggest luminaries really in the world in some cases, and we're having a few more that will be really big. That will be announced soon. Combination of them plus people who are very practical and how you can deploy AI, which is really exciting. And so we're banking on the fact that we've got enough of those stars, the star artist, if you will. And the fact that we have these programs like a solution bridge to help buyers and sellers connect, and Venture Connect to help them connect, and we have an entire huge space just for honestly booking just connections that's totally free to go do. We're banking on the combination of incredible speakers and content, The fact that cross-pollination should be happening, so you to stay within your silo of health, for example, will not get you the best outcomes. You really should be looking at what law is doing, what finance is doing, what retail is doing. Those are all important things. So we're banking on that to try to make sure that people stick around for the whole time. And of course, we're gonna have a great act on the third day and in the evening. Like no one's gonna want to miss this act. It's gonna be great. So, last night here at Health, they have Busta Rhymes. So, I gotta be Busta Rhymes. That's my only goal. Yeah,
Amazing.
that's great. Yeah.
Jessica just said in the comments that she was literally going
Yeah.
to ask this
I saw
question,
that.
like, how are you balancing the risk in your contracts? And Marissa also makes a great point. Not to call out any events by name, but like our experience is similar to Marissa's was when we go to an event, the final day is it's really slow. It starts to thin out. So like,
Yeah.
why not tailor your event experience to how people behave? Right. That's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
brilliant.
Well, again, this could be a terrible idea. No, I think it. I think a couple of things, and then this is what I'm banking on after looking at all the. We built a bunch of models to figure this out. But what I'm banking on is that because we are focusing intensely a topic on a day, like compare and contrast to how we traditionally have done this, and even how Health Today does this. The content is spread across all the days for a particular interest area. But if you know that, for example, your interest area is happening on Tuesday, like it's unlikely you're going to come Monday afternoon, sit all day Tuesday, and then bail on Wednesday. At that point, you're saying, well, I'm already here. I may as well stick around to see what these incredible speakers they have on Wednesday, this incredible party they have on Wednesday night, that kind of thing. Same with the kind of with Monday, it's a little more risky. With Wednesday, it's much less risky because people are going to come in. They're not going to come in just for a day. In most cases, they're going to come in for the entire time. And then one thing we're doing as well on both sides of the event, on Sunday and Thursday, is we're having these incredible partner programs. And so basically, some of our biggest
Mm.
partners, like Goodwin Procter, who's an incredible law firm, they're going to bring a few hundred people to HumanX for the entire week, and then have a special event just for them, half day thing at the end, which we're basically, we're basically comping Goodwin the room to go do as a way to help Goodwin get in deep with their clients, prospects, leads, partners, but also then of course help us by bringing them to the event. And so we'll have things like that as well. Section, for example, Scott Galloway's company, they're hosting an AI certification half day on the Sunday before, I believe it is. And so
Mm.
same kind of thing. People come in for that. They can spend half the day getting certified in AI and then bleed into the event. But yeah, well, it's on us to make sure that programming, frankly, even if it is concentrated for a track on one day, making sure there's enough going on, enough value, not just like to blow time, but what's the value we're offering to attendees to stick around all the way through to the end. Yeah, it's a risk for sure.
I I I'd be interested to circle back with you in 8 months and hear how the
Oh
risk
yeah.
paid off.
Well,
So,
tell us in 5 months if it paid off. We'll tell you
um, yeah.
then.
So I think a couple of notes that I just really appreciate as you're dialoguing with us is you're building something at scale that's highly personalized. That's what we're all working to do for all of our
Mhm.
attendees. But I also love this analogy that I sort of stumbled into this by mistake, but you're building an event like the same way that you would code software. Right? Like really complex
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
background, but really like a simple, delightful experience on the delivery.
Yeah.
And and I think like as I've gotten to know you, I think where I really started to do backflips in my chair was you are not only convening AI leaders, but you are implementing AI, I think, in a way that's a bit meta at your event. So you're not only trying to build the flagship convening for AI leaders across enterprise businesses in the world, you're actually giving them a better experience because of the implementation of AI through the execution of your event. And I think that's where this gets really rich, really fun, really interesting.
Yeah.
I'd love for us to spend some time just playing in the
Sure.
sandbox on, can
Yeah.
you walk us through a few of the ways that you're leveraging AI,
Yeah.
and kind of walk us through what that looks like from implementation, but then also how does that impact attendee experience?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's it's we spend a lot of time. We have an incredible product manager, Emily, who is our head of product, and she's just exceptionally skilled in thinking through all these touch points and how we can make them better. And not everything's better with AI. Some things are perfectly okay the way they are. So it's you have to be part of the first challenge is figuring out what actually will make sense to make better with AI, and then not run the risk or head towards the shiny baubles for things that don't matter. But certainly a few things. And I think one of the coolest things we're doing, I just was so excited about, is for every session, everything's multi-cam recorded and professionally edited right there, plus afterwards, but everything's transcribed real time. So as the attendee sitting in the audience on his or her app, they can be in the app, they can look at it, and they can see all the transcription of all the speakers on stage in real time. So to me, I hate taking notes. You're sitting there, those chairs that are bolted together on your laptop, you're scribbling things down. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. I hate it, and your battery dies, and then you're screwed. So this way, you're seeing all the transcription real time. That itself isn't super new. That's been out for a little while. What we're also
Yep.
doing is we're doing real-time AI summarization. So now what we're doing is taking transcription in one tab, second tab is summary. So as people are speaking, it's actually building out the outline for you. And that's really helpful if say you're not in the session or you're late to the session. You can go back and catch up on the key points that were talked about in the session. Then it goes a little step further, and we have cameras on stage that point out to the audience, and we're able to actually watch everyone's expressions, their reactions, their frowns, their
Wow.
claps, etc. And that's all time coded back to the actual talk. So then it allows us to say, okay, what were the parts of the session that were the most interesting or the most controversial or the most boring, whatever it might be, and either highlight or deprecate those things as we think about recaps and syndicating content out post-session. And so really we're, rather than me saying, oh, that's a good point, I don't have to. The software tells me this is the thing that got the most interaction in the audience, for example. So
Yeah,
yeah,
you're literally conducting an attendee survey without even having to ask a question,
correct,
which
exactly.
is just incredible.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So that, and then the last thing we're doing, which I'm really excited about too, is that everything gets loaded into our custom LLM. Every session, every utterance, every word of every session gets loaded in, and then the people can go, attendees can go and actually query the entire event. And so again, what's the big pain point that I have? And this is all on me obviously at the end of the day. But my biggest pain point at session or at conferences is that I I may have picked the right sessions to go to, but I don't know. And there may have been things
Hmm.
that were said in sessions that are directly relevant to me, but I never would have known because I wasn't there. And I'm not going to go through and comb through 300 talks. That doesn't make any sense. So by loading everything into our custom LLM, we then allow people to query the entire conference as a basically an agent
Wow.
and say, where was data governance mentioned? Or I'm looking for data governance in my bank. I can't, whatever you want to say, it doesn't matter. So it's a query bot. And then we'll go through and find using NLP, using our LLMs, all the points in every session where that was mentioned or talked about, and then bring that to you directly. So you can literally just click on it, what the first link, and you drop right into that talk where it's being discussed, and you can move on. So really, we're taking the ability for people to again hyper personalize their experience by asking things they really care about, and making us do the work to surface those interests and highlights in the sessions themselves right to the user, which we're really excited about.
Wow.
That's a
It's
pretty cool one.
I mean, that's very cool. Like I literally am hearing you talk about it and I get giddy, right? It is really, really cool
Yeah.
what you're building. People are asking in the chat, what is the technology that you're using? Is it is it something that's accessible to everyone? Is it something you've personally built?
Not personally, thank God. My coding skills are a bit out of date, but it would not work at all if I was building it. There is so on one we're using a company called Read.ai. They're the one that are doing transcription for us, but it's not available to everybody. So no, you can't just go use this right now. It's a deal we've struck with the incredible founder that I know to do a lot of this work with us. So this will be the first deployment of that technology out in the field. And then on the large language model summarization, it's a company. I think they're still in stealth though, technically. But I'll put it in the notes afterwards if we can send it out. But same kind of thing. Uh, it's not a custom build for us, but it's a hyper customized build for us to
Cool.
get that. Yeah, but this, I mean, look, I don't think any of this stuff's going to be proprietary for long. I think people are going to see this and say this is huge, and they'll go build applications people can use all across the place. I don't think it's going to be something that's locked up in a vault forever at all.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I mean, and people are, Wendy just said, like, in all caps, every show should be able to do this now,
I agree.
and
I agree.
the technology is evolving in real time.
Yeah,
Um,
it is expensive. Of course, I'm sure it gets very expensive. That's the only problem,
yep,
right? So like doing multicam with full, making sure you're transcribing things directed at the right person who said it. It's like these things get very pricey, obviously. So you have to be ready to. But that'll drop too. That'll all drop too. It's just a matter of when.
it's just a matter of time.
Yeah,
And it's also why I was excited to do this session, right? Because there's a piece of the technology is emerging and innovating in real time, and part of it is just having the awareness and education around what's possible, what's coming, how can we think about it. um
yeah.
I'm going to jump around a little
Oh,
bit
just
because
I
I
just
was.
one second on that.
Oh
Actually,
yeah.
I just looked. Uh, I can talk about that. So yeah, the company that's doing the LLM summarization is called Alani, Alani, Alani AI. It's an offshoot of Bundle IQ, which is a great company. They're the ones who are doing that summariz the search for us. So there you go. You can use that today.
Let's see, ALANI dot
Uh-huh.
AI.
Yep,
Okay,
Alani AI. Yeah, exactly.
cool. I'm
Yeah.
going to drop that in the chat for everybody. um Yeah. Okay. So Jackie, you just read my mind because this is where I was going. Jackie just asked, like, what can small orgs or associations do to start? And I think where I was going, there's one other question I want to ask you about your
Yeah, sure.
event, but we'll
Sure.
circle back to it. But, for folks in the audience that, are just getting started on beginning to implement maybe more sophisticated AI into their events, like how do you recommend folks get started?
Well, it's a good question as Jackie top was probably alluding to. It's expensive to do this stuff. So if you're a small
Yeah.
event and don't have venture capital backing and everything else, yeah, this is really hard to do at scale at this point. It's really hard to do. But the same thing, it goes back to what we're telling our enterprises to do at HumanX, which is start with the highest, best use cases first. Like, don't look at, like, transcription may sound like the best use case for your audience, but it maybe isn't. Maybe the best use case for your
Mm-hmm.
audience, frankly, is better people matching. So, using another product that we're working with, called Boardly, which they actually allow ahead of time an AI to call a person, to call an attendee, ask that person what he or she is looking to get out of the event. So it's a very simple phone call. You talk to this AI, the AI charts out what you want, and then the AI, our AI, their AI, then goes and figures out who else at the event could be helpful or who else you should be meeting at the event based on aligned interests. So rather than just typing in a bio or typing in a few interests on a keyword page, which frankly none of us do, and if we do, they're usually crappy. Here, you can have a conversation with somebody, and they can ask, "Who do you want to meet? What's important? What are you trying to get out of it?" And then the they is an AI. it's a bot on a phone, but then and connecting those people is a really
Hmm.
powerful way. So that's a relatively simple way. There's not a lot of infrastructure you have to build to do that. I don't even think it's that crazily expensive. I don't actually know the numbers right now, but I don't think it's that expensive. But that's one. That again has to come from the needs of your audience. So start there. Just like, again, I'm a product guy. So what is your
Yep.
ICP? What does your customer persona need? And then go. You may be surprised how simple it is to fill that with AI. But I would never start with tool first and then back into needs. That's a guaranteed recipe for disaster.
Yeah. I think that's a great recommendation, right? Just the because again, there's another theme that's surfacing here, and you are implementing personalization at every stage, and that includes, how it informs your application of AI.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um, let's see. I just want to make sure I didn't miss any other
Well, one cool thing I'll
questions.
tell you, just as quick, just because it's
Yeah.
cool to talk about. But on another thing we're doing a lot of stuff with AI. But the other thing I really love is a company called Astronav, which is this crazy company. I love them to death. I've known them for years. But basically, they use very sophisticated AI models to use the Earth's magnetic field to do precise XYZ positioning in 3D space. Okay, what's that mean? It means that if you're in the convention center on the show floor today, as we all know, the blue dots that are in many applications just kind of suck, and it's like hard to find where you have to go, and you're looking for wayfinding signs and positional, and you're like, I don't know where I'm going. This way, with Astronav, we're able to build it into our app such that any device, any mobile device that's been built in the last 20 years has what's called a magnetometer in it, which basically is the ability for it to do directional sensing, like north, east, southwest. And astronauts using AI to literally build a 3D model of the planet, such that even in a convention center with no GPS access, with no Wi-Fi beacons, with no Bluetooth beacons, you're able actually to go and you're able actually to go and find precisely where you need to be, whether it's a person or booth, using your phone all the way through. So again, very, very weird application of AI, but one of those things where I hate I hate trying to find booths in halls. I hate trying to find people in halls. So again, this is all about me. How do I make my experience better by being able to guide people successfully with AI? So that's another fun one.
Yeah, that's actually one that I wanted you to plug
Yeah,
because like I actually think it's a pain point for a lot of attendees. It's even a pain point for uh sponsors, partners, vendors in the
yeah,
marketplace, like everybody, right? Like you're setting meetings, I mean, in some cases, like like the marketplace hall could be so large. Like, how do you even find the vendor where you're trying to have a
yeah,
meeting with?
exactly.
So the fact that you could essentially have GPS tracking to the location of a vendor, a meeting room, an event space is totally game changing.
Yeah.
I would think in the experience component of the event world.
Oh yeah, I think so. I think so. Yeah.
Um, I just want to surface Jessica. Thanks for dropping this in here.
Yeah, good one too.
She
Really?
dropped in a
Yeah.
couple solutions that they're trying. Is Udly. It's a presenter practicing tool.
Yeah.
There's a free version. And pre-conference, they're working with their speakers to be detailed in the notes section of their PowerPoint so that they can
Great
create a
idea.
job aid as a handout on site for each session, and then
Right.
using Chat GPT to create the job aid. I think that's a perfect example of a practical, low hanging fruit, like great way to get started. And again, like no, like especially when you think about streamlining the speaker experience, giving them better training, onboarding, like flexing your speaker outbound muscle to create stronger event content and thus a better experience. And the fact that you're using AI to do that, incredible.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. I'm totally gonna borrow that one too.
Awesome. Um, wow, we are 45 minutes goes
My
by
gosh. Sure enough.
quickly when you're having fun. I have loved how busy the chat has been. If we have a few extra minutes, if you don't mind, we do have a few more
Yeah, I'm fine.
questions that have kind of flown through, and there's actually
Sure.
some from earlier in our conversation. So I'm just going to drop them, and as we're chatting, if anyone else has questions, drop them in the chat, drop them in the Q&A, and we'll get them answered. Megan, hey, glad you're here. She said that she was very curious on how you're facilitating mobile wayfinding. Yeah, I'm very curious on how you're facilitating mobile wayfinding.
Yeah. Well, that's the Astronav product I talked about, and then we're integrating that into our app provider, who's Grip, which is a great provider out of the UK. Great CEO, very technically focused. So we're able to actually work with Grip and Astronav to do what'll be the first implementation of this inside of that application. So yeah, that's how we're doing it. And then basically the Astronav product works independent of training, and so as long as it knows the schematic of the space and the position in three-dimensional space, like the precise that long, then it does all the work for us. It's pretty crazy.
That's a that's amazing.
Yeah.
One thing I'm going to do for everybody here is throughout the conversation, I've been just like quickly Google searching and finding all of these platforms that you've referenced. I will follow up with an email to everyone, and I'll just surface every platform and what they do, just so that you all like have record of them.
Yeah.
Um, that's great. And then we had a question earlier, and I was trying to find a place to fit it in, so I was just saving it for the end. But we had an attendee ask, um, for the different tracks that you're implementing, they're kind of curious, is the pricing different? Like if you're
Mm.
attending only one day with the content that's tailored for you, are there different pricing models based upon the experience that you want to buy into?
That's a great idea. No, no, right now it's a one price. There is an upgrade you can do to get you a bunch of benefits, but no, that's an interesting thing. We're really my thesis was if you just want to go get AI content for your industry, like if you're at health, for example, and you really want to just go get AI content for just for health, then you should come to health. And there's great AI content here and great AI tracks. That's all fine. Um, but I would argue that misses what AI can actually do. And
Mm,
you miss the cross pollination of ideas from other industries if you just stick with your own particular event. And reality too is like as good as all these events are, we're always going to have the better AI speakers at HumanX than a vertical event. And if it's a concrete event, like they're going to get whatever, maybe a great supply chain manager in AI, but we're going to get the person that runs, Conco or something like that to come and speak. And so I think you're going to have a combination of better quality speakers, not throwing shade at just the reality of an AI event is
yeah.
different than a vertical event. So we'll have better speakers and you have cross pollination. So no, we have not thought about very good pricing based on track because I think the whole thing's going to be valuable. It's just we're trying to simplify the experience for the attendee.
Yeah. That's great advice. Um, I have one last question before we wrap, and I don't actually know if there's an answer, but I'm just kind of curious. Um, do you have any suggested, I'm kind of just keeping in mind of like folks that are trying to get started because there was another question that came through asking about, what are your recommendations for where we start? Are there resources, sites, forums, like areas that are kind of best in class for helping people get started? Anything come to mind?
Not really, honestly.
No.
The challenge with
Attend HumanX.
yeah, attend HumanX.
Yeah.
Honestly, come on down. Well, you'll see what works and what doesn't work. You'll see half my ideas won't work, and you'll laugh. That's the nature of product. No, I unfortunately, and that's honestly why we did HumanX. Is it is overwhelming. Like there are literally hundreds of newsletters, all of which proclaim 100,000 subscribers each. That daily summarize news for you, and I just I don't know. Unless you're in it every day, it's really difficult. I would say like I said, I think we're doing a lot of pioneering work here, but it's all going to become more commoditized over time. And so eventually, this stuff we're doing will trickle down to everybody. We just
Yeah.
happen to be probably the ones that are doing it first because we have the resources and the people to pull it off. But again, look, I product building product can be cruel. So sometimes the things that you think are going to work the best actually absolutely have zero impact, and the things that you think are afterthoughts end up being the key features. So we'll see what works. Come back to me in 5 months,
Amazing.
I'll tell you.
Amazing. We might have to have you back in five
Yeah,
months and unpack
yeah,
everything
yeah,
you
yeah.
learned.
If I solve a job, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, there's a lot of gratitude in the chat. It sounds like
No, yeah,
folks
it's
had
great.
folks had a great experience. Really appreciate you
Yeah,
joining us and
pleasure.
unpacking your event, your experience building an event for the first time. Um, and you and John have an awesome partnership, and so we're all cheering you on. So
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it.
we're
A lot of
hoping
fun.
your breakthroughs help the rest of us, in due time.
I,
So
I love to share, so I'm happy to do that.
beautiful, beautiful. Well, thanks everybody for attending. If you want to learn more about HumanX and check out the event, I'm going to plug the event in the chat. I'll also include that in a follow up with all of the AI resources that we discussed here today. And again, we know your time is valuable, so thanks for
Yeah.
spending it with us.
And
Stefan, thanks for.
I'll
Oh,
just do one plug if you don't mind, Brian. One plug.
yeah, please.
I know a lot of folks on this call are amazing event organizers and planners, and that's amazing. And I'll just say, look, if you're working with companies, if you're working with organizations who you think could benefit from HumanX, please reach out. We are happy to do custom packages for people. We're happy to do, if you're working with I don't know, a company that this is beneficial for, be the hero. Go and say, hey, look, I was on this thing. Here's this incredible event for AI. You should be attending. And then because you're special, here's a great opportunity. Here's a great offer for you to attend. So please feel free to reach out. I'm just Stefan at humanx.co. Pretty simple with an F, not PH. And I'm happy to have the team put together things that are special for your clients and customers.
Beautiful. That's a super generous offer. Just double
Yeah.
checking. I know I have this, but it's Stefan at humanx.co.
Yeah, .co, not .com. .com was
Yeah,
not
co.
worth
Yeah.
the money. Yeah, yeah, it's not worth. It wasn't worth the money to buy the URL at this point. So maybe next year.
Awesome. I just
All right,
dropped your email in the chat.
great.
So thanks so much. And yeah, lastly, go to HumanX, check out what Stefan and John and the team are building. Can't wait to see what unfolds in Vegas for you in 5 months. And last but not least, as we wrap, I'm just going to share my screen one more time. Oh, can you guys see my screen?
No, it says they started screen. No, not yet. No. Oh,
Uh,
was it be like an epic reveal? I know you have to show it.
no, and I'm gonna end up letting you down, I think. But I'm having issues with my presenter view. But I did just have a plug. I'm kind of curious. Because it's an inaugural event, did you
Here we
use
go.
AI to create
Oh.
the photo?
No, that's just good old-fashioned Photoshop from our creative director.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So head on over to HumanX. If you have questions, you want to connect, if you see potential for an intersection with what Stefan's building in your world, please reach out to him at stefan@humanx.co, not .com. And here at Session Board, we have a lot more conversations happening over the course of the rest of the year. So every single week, we host live conversations with event content experts, and we're super psyched about our lineup. And next week, we have Emily Lewis, who's the SVP of Marketing, Audience, and Content Strategy at Emerald, joining us. And we're going to be talking about content strategies for engaging your audience, not just at your event, but year round. So I hope you'll join us. I'm going to drop that RSVP in the chat. And until next time, thanks everybody for joining us. Have a great rest of your week, and tons of gratitude for you, Stefan, and
Oh,
cheering you on.
you too, folks. Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all.
Bye.